Learned to play an instrument. Learned a second language. Applied to college. Applied for a loan. Started a business. Started a blog. Shared a picture. Shared a moment. Turn your wish list into a checklist with Internet Essentials from Comcast. When you're connected, you're ready for anything.
It's Albuquerque. It's film. It's music. It's the online virtual experience you don't want to miss with films, music, and celebrity guests. Go to abqfilmx.com to buy tickets and passes today. See you in September at the Albuquerque Film and Music Experience.
Today's world demands students' ability to do far more than be able to recite information. It requires them to be able to critically analyze content, to apply it across disciplines, be able to collaborate, and be creative in solving real-world problems. At Bosque, we are attempting to create those learning experiences for students every day, and I encourage you to join us in providing your child with a life-changing and challenging education.
Between the book and the conversation about, it's not necessarily the best actor, it's the right actor. For me, digesting that kind of alleviated a lot of anxiety.
It kind of just made me think more about like the journey that we're on and like booking the room more than like getting the job, and focusing more on that aspect of it rather than trying to be like perfect for the role and trying to be perfect in every single tape. Just trying to be the best that I can be and to show that in everything I do.
One of the many things that was helpful for me was the list of what to have to do a self-tape. Just discerning what is manageable right now, what's next, and what's really usable. It was just really great. I felt like I was in really good hands.
It never really occurred to me to view it as like starting a business with a marketable product. It's just exciting, and just thinking about it as like an entrepreneur, and I never viewed myself that way before, and so that's like really powerful and empowering. I really appreciate that.
If you had a role, you were really only auditioning people that lived in Los Angeles, and then maybe a few years later it was Los Angeles, New York. Then you had Los Angeles, New York, Atlanta, Chicago. Now we can find someone anywhere. I mean, you could have a client, Brad, that lives in Omaha, Nebraska, like that lives anywhere, and they could make a tape, and the next thing you know, they're on television.
Hello. I am Sean Hedinger here representing AFMX this year. A couple of years ago, I've been the music coordinator here, and I'm a local musician, producer, film composer, all things film and music I love. So I'm thrilled to be hosting this Q&A from In the Same Direction, Jeff Piffer and Socrates Trial. We have Alexander Craven and Jeff Piffer. Am I saying that right, Jeff? I already feel like I said it completely wrong.
It's Jeff Pipe.
So
thanks for having us. We're happy to be here.
Yeah,
pleasure to be here.
Talking backstage, we're well represented all over the country right now. Got Californians, got some East Coasters, of course. New Orleans is represented, and New York as well. So let's just dive right in. I love
No, no. I kind of became the director of this film by proxy to a degree. I run a composer management firm in Los Angeles, and one of our composers was doing some of the arranging for Jeff's record as well, so the orchestrating. And yeah, I had gotten called in to do a Q&A session for kind of a smaller piece that Jeff was working on. Jeff's a remarkable guy in that he's a multimedia artist. He's not just a saxophone player. So he always has 5 to 7 cameras rolling whenever he does any sort of recording, or even a lot of your just practice sessions even are recorded, right, Jeff?
Yeah, yep.
I got called in with that, and had it was a very plush situation where I had hours upon hours, 2,500 hours of different sessions to choose from, and to kind of work on the edit together and watch. And that also represented a pretty big challenge of kind of finding that thread of the story and asking, what is the real story to tell here? And, you know, through a lengthy process, finally figured that out. And yeah, so.
Nice. I can just imagine the fun of editing all those hours, hundreds of hours. Yeah. All right. And then Andrew and Jeremy, I'll jump over to you guys. How did you get involved? I saw that this was at the end of the credits, it was the New Orleans Tourism, right? And what are one of you guys affiliated with them?
Yeah.
CI and our creative director, Andrew. I mean, it's one of those things that was kind of obvious once it's said out loud, but sometimes that's why you hire brilliant agencies to state the obvious for you, and everybody's like, oh yeah, of course. You know, music is such an integral part of the New Orleans experience. And the idea was that no matter what your politics are, no matter what your religion is, no matter what your, you know, personal beliefs are, when you're in a club in New Orleans, you're connected, and you're connected in a way that kind of transcends all of those things to everybody else around you. So it was a matter of basically thinking how we bring that to life, how you bring a New Orleans concert experience to life. And you know, I'm happy to defer to Andrew in terms of how it took off from there. But I love the partnership we did with Spotify. It was really kind of a nice way to showcase the different genres as well. Maybe Andrew can speak a little bit to that. I think Spotify identified 8 different genres associated with New Orleans.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this was something that for something so emotional and visceral and sort of irrational in every sort of way, was something that started, frankly, in a really sort of dorky way, right? Or a really sort of data way, where we sort of worked with Spotify, and we looked at years and years of listener data from you know, from the city, to try to really identify what is the sound of New Orleans, right? I mean, we think about jazz, we think about brass, and of course Cash Money and No Limit and everything else, but you know, what is the sort of breadth and depth of that sound? And we ended up building a playlist that was representative of all of those genres, of all of those different artists, and all of you know, the years of that data, and we put that playlist on up online. We waited for fans to follow it, and then we surprised a handful of them by actually flying them down and performing the playlist from start to finish for them, with all of the original acts in what we consider to be, you know, the sort of church of New Orleans music, Preservation Hall, which if you've never had a chance to go, I hope you spend some time there. It is truly one of the most special places in the world, and so fortunate to be able to celebrate the music of our hometown, and to be able to work with so many talented artists. And you know, these are artists that represent you know, Grammy nominations, and you know, 23 Hot 100 singles and platinum albums, and I think it's representative of in total 100 million Spotify streams. And so to be able to you know, get Irma Thomas and Currency in the same room, and to be able to have a reason to do that, was really the joy of a lifetime.
Yeah, that was special. And I want to go back later. I'll follow up with that one night concert because that's cool. I know we have Jeff kind of for a limited amount of time, so I just wanted to ask you, what did this album mean to you, and what is the documentary to you? Are they two separate things? Are they the same thing?
Yeah, I think that they're a lot of it is one and the same. You know, the documentary is to kind of to follow this idea, the main theme of the record, not only musically but also the history of the Declaration of Independence and how that ties into sort of this concept album. Through the process, the recording process, rehearsal process, and then the live show. So much of it is one and the same. However, I feel like there are a lot of documentaries out there that do cover jazz from a historical perspective, but not much that covers what's happening now, the contemporary world meaning of now. And especially in Los Angeles and this more organic grassroots, young, visionary type of way. Not that I'm one of those people, but there are many here that are.
Don't sell yourself short. Don't you do that.
Yeah, he's one of those people. I'm positive.
Yeah, we know. We saw the movie. Come on.
But I feel like there's just not that much representation in that regard. So I felt like this was a great opportunity to try to get a music out there that nowadays is less accessible for a lot of preconceived notions, and to deliver it in a way that's a bit more accessible. I like to create what I call cinematic jazz. So it's like this combination of film score music with improvised solos from the jazz tradition. And so with that kind of combination, it becomes a bit more accessible to the general public. And in turn, the idea is to try and help keep jazz alive in some respects, because it exists so much in the academic world. A lot of it that's keeping it together now is academia and the study of jazz by other jazz musicians, and not so much by the general public. So whatever I can do to help get the music out there in some accessible way is really what I'm trying to do, especially with this project.
Nice. And I think you nailed it as far as making this kind of cool, new, accessible crossover thing. It was cool. I loved it. Now I guess I'm starting to sense a theme about like the live show that you guys captured, and the live show that the offline playlist captured. So Jeff, tell us about that concert. I mean, I assume you play with 20 strings everywhere you go, right? That's just like part of your show.
Yeah, no, that was a feat. That was a tough thing to get together. Not only logistically, obviously, but also we had to modify a lot of the music in order to accomplish a live show, because as jazz artists, we like to improvise and take our time and not kind of go with this, let's play that section 4 times and then we're done and we're on to the next thing. We want to have a dialogue. I mean, that's part of what's so great about jazz, is this dialogue between not only you and the soloists and the accompanying players, but also the audience. So we had to come up with ways and cues, which were facilitated by orchestrator and arranger Harlan Hodges, who did a really wonderful job. But rewrite a lot of the music to work for the live show. And then the club that we performed in, called the Blue Whale in Los Angeles downtown area, is really built for much smaller groups. I mean, small ensembles, 5, 7 people, sometimes, you see big bands in there, but certainly not 16 strings and woodwinds and brass and the band. And then we had Brad Cobb from the LA Opera, who does all their recording, come in with exorbitant amount of equipment to.
Yeah, that's the other nightmare. I didn't even think about that. Now you have to capture the audio, right? Yeah.
There was 48 channels.
6 cameras.
Yeah, and all the camera equipment. I mean, they had the camera guys were on wireless setups so that they could get out of the shots and communicate with the DP, who was behind a black curtain in the corner, and running Cat5 cables to the green rooms for audio and all that stuff. Just getting the chairs there, chairs and stands. I mean, they had to have trucks come in and do all this stuff. So it was a big a feat to put together, but it was certainly a magical night that I'll never forget, and I know the players really enjoyed it. The audience, it was definitely well worth it, and we did get a live album out of it, so which is out.
Killer, nice, good plug. Andrew, Jeremy, tell us about that one night. I'm assuming everyone just walked on stage, did one take. It's truly a live captured concert. I didn't see a lot of the people. There's a couple shots. It was hard to get a sense of the space where the cameras were and how far back it went, in Preservation Hall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As small as the Blue Whale is, and I don't know because I haven't been there, but I'm guessing it's maybe a little bigger than Preservation Hall. Just the size. Pres Hall is a tiny little club in the French Quarter. So we had some similar challenges, not with chairs and stands as much, but just getting, for a couple of the numbers, we had everybody on stage, and in addition to cameras, and that building was built, gosh, I don't know, Andrew, 1800s, something like that, and
or older, yeah.
Yeah, and
it's the oldest part of the city.
And we shot it in July or August in New Orleans, which, if you've ever been here in July or August, it tends to be a little warm, and even with the newly added air conditioning in that space, it got a little steamy, but it was all part of the experience, I think, and all part of the charm and the ambiance of the shoot. I think our biggest, I had two things that made me nervous about the shoot. One was just making sure that we could get all the shots that we needed to get, because it was a one take for many of these guys. Luckily, and really brilliantly, the agency, as we planned to shoot, we shot a full day of rehearsals the day before at a studio, which had a lot more room and gave us a lot more opportunity that's where all the interviews that you see were done. And so we kind of had everything planned out and orchestrated. So when we got people in on stage the next day, it was one take, and then they were out. I think we may have done the first number or the closing number, Andrew. Maybe we did that a couple times, but for the most part, it was it was over before we knew it. The other thing I was concerned about was Irma Thomas, the Queen of Soul, had another gig that night at 8:00. And so we were like, whatever you do, you got to get Miss Irma to her gig by 8. And we did it. We took care of her. She came in, and everybody was a professional. And to Andrew's point earlier, when you have such a diverse range of artists and musicians from all different genres coming together, there's a bit of an unknown there. You're rolling the dice a little bit in terms of dynamic. And I don't know if it's just the fact that New Orleans was the kind of the main character in all of this, but everybody was just fantastic. All of the artists, to a person. I think we're just so happy to be a part of it, so happy to give their time, and so gracious with their performances. Andrew, I don't know if you want to add anything there, but it was to me, it was a really memorable night.
Looking back, we talk about having a day of rehearsals, which is, funny, because really with 10 different artists, I think that by the time we got to the show, I think that was probably the third time that those artists had played that song together. I think that they rehearsed it twice the day before, and that was it, right? I mean, we were, trying, it was an ambitious project, right? And trying to get that many different types of people to come together and sort of, we looked at this honestly as the New Orleans version of the Last Waltz in so many ways. And I hope we did that justice to the extent that we were able to. But, to me, the overwhelming thing about this show, about the rehearsals, was just this generosity of spirit that I think is so present in New Orleans, and I think frankly more present than just about anywhere else, and the spirit of collaboration and to Jeff's point about the improvisation of jazz, right? It's something that we sort of struggled with too, of making sure that we had enough space to do that, but also sort of keep everything moving and do it in a way that worked in the space, and do it in a way that worked for a massive amount of people in a space that is not built for a massive amount of people. And so, yeah.
Nice. And really quick to anyone out there with a question, figure out how to get it to me and I'll ask it. Jeff, I know we're coming up on your time because this is the COVID era and everyone has to find some new online economy gigs. So you're teaching, how are you surviving?
Yeah, I do a lot of teaching online. I'm actually a teaching artist with the Herbie Hancock Institute, which is out of UCLA. And I think they're getting ready to start up again for this year. But we've actually been, since March, we did through the end of the school year, jazz ensembles online, which is private lessons is tough in many ways, but ensemble work is another challenge, because you can't really play together, like especially with jazz. I mean, that's just
latency, right?
Yeah, that's the biggest part of it is playing together. So we have to find ways to keep students engaged and teach them as best we can. We also have to do a lot of outside work in preparation, preparing recordings. Students have to record themselves and send it to the teachers, and we have to review that and send notes and go back and forth. So some things are good about that because you get to a couple of goes at it before the next lesson rather than doing just your weekly, you show up and here's what I have type of thing. So there's some advantages to it, but yeah, so that's been the primary way of keeping afloat.
And we were talking offline before about how the venues are doing kind of live streaming events. Have you done any of those performances?
Well, I was asked through the LA Jazz Society to do a live streaming performance with Socrates Trial, but it's kind of, you have to kind of limit how many people you have in a room, especially when I was asked. So rather than doing a live performance with all of us together and having poor sound quality just with a cell phone, I felt like it would be better to do kind of a Q&A type thing, and then in which each of us kind of share what we're working on and play in our own respective homes what we're working on. So I demonstrated some stuff I'm transcribing and talking about some of the other artists that I've been listening to and some playing examples of concepts I'm working on, and each of us kind of did that, and it was a good way to get the whole band involved. And I've been asked by the Jazz Educators Conference to take part in their conference this year, which will be virtual with Socrates Trial. So just trying to get a venue to record, do a pre-record in is tough. I mean, I've contacted several local venues and they're very leery about getting more than 2 or 3 people together. And the band is at minimum, there's 5 of us. So I've had to actually rent a studio to do it, which is going to afford a lot of great opportunities to record, which will be great. But of course, you wanna perform from places that you want to help support, because it helps them too if you get their name out there. But it's still very difficult, especially in Los Angeles. I've been a few other places in the country fairly recently, and I've noticed the rules are different depending on where you are, and there are places that are kind of allowing certain things, but definitely in Los Angeles, they're staying way on top of it and trying to be ahead of the curve as best they can at this point, and keeping to a lot of those restrictions.
Yeah, and you can't fault them for that. I like the idea of doing the glimpse behind the scenes of whatever it is you're working on. That's cool too. Alexander, what have you been doing? How is your art and craft and livelihood surviving in this era?
Well, besides managing my 3-year-old,
right.
it's been a process. I have a narrative film that I've was taking meetings at a meeting at Annapurna, a meeting at Bad Robot, all the bigger companies prior, and then pulled the plug on that for sure with COVID happening. It just seemed like everybody is done with making any forward movement. So just been continuing to work on my own smaller writing projects here and there. As far as the composer management type stuff goes, I run a company called Aporia Entertainment that has the composer Harlan Hodges that was working on Jeff's record originally. That stuff is kind of teetered out. There's been a couple TV-oriented scoring sessions, but again, they're liability in the quote unquote film industry is everything. And right now we're just reaching the point where I think the unions finally reached an agreement. I think it was on Tuesday to open up production on some stuff. So we're getting there, but yeah. As far as spending my time on quote unquote work related stuff that isn't my own personal projects, this has afforded me a lot of time to actually focus on my own stuff again, which is great. But,
yeah. Yeah, and then I'll flip it over to let's start with Jeremy first, because you were reminding us New Orleans thrives on live music. I can only imagine like how that's hit the community.
Yeah, it's been tough. It's really been tough for a lot of folks here. We also survive or promote one of our other greatest assets here culturally is food, and restaurants are struggling as well. We've been able to help that effort somewhat as they've been opened up, as they've been continuing to be able to open at limited capacities. And from a tourism perspective, which is really the hat I wear, is just trying to we're trying to continue to promote brand love to all the people that have a connection with New Orleans, that love New Orleans but can't be here for whatever reason, or aren't ready to travel, or we're not ready to host them. And then two, support the businesses that we can in as many ways as we can right now. So our hope is that live music will come back very soon. We have a lot of incredibly talented musicians who cannot wait to get back to it. There is some live music on the street. I was saying earlier in our call that one block over, directly across from me, and I live in a neighborhood uptown, not in a big tourist area, but there's a brass band. Some guys live in a double one block over, and every Friday night they do a concert for the neighborhood. Everybody comes out in their chairs wearing masks. It's all socially distanced. It's all done well, but they're just taking Venmo tips at this point, which is it's tough, but it's nice to hear some live music, particularly in your neighborhood when you're outside after work on a Friday. And I think the neighborhood's doing what they can to support those guys, and I'm sure that's happening all over the city. But we are anxious to get back to some sense of normal where people can go out and have a real New Orleans experience. In the meantime, attractions, restaurants, hotels, those are all open in different varying capacities, and you can still experience New Orleans to some degree, but music is a big part of it, and we can't wait to get it back.
I'm glad that you guys found that kind of public performance, aspect. Here in my neighborhood, there's a guy who comes on a flatbed truck. We call him the Mariachi Elvis. He's just crooning as loud as he can when they're blasting some Spanish music. It's pretty cool. I if anyone knows who that guy is, please let me know through here. I want to give him a shout out. Andrew, what are you doing to stay afloat in this, and how has COVID hit your film plans?
Yeah, we're still working. We're still we're working on some next things. We're taking a look at all the different things that Jeremy talked about, right? Of this is a city that in so many different ways has been through so much, right? And has come back, and we're we're 15 years from the storm, and countless little things from them. But I just as terrible as all of this has been, so eager and so excited and so proud to see how this city rebounds, and we can't wait to continue to document that culturally, and to continue to promote that, and to welcome people back with open arms as soon as they're ready.
Yeah. Well, here's a question that I asked last night at the other panel I did. What is your biggest piece of advice to up and comers, emerging filmmakers? Is there any? Can you help them cut the corners? I'll start here. I'll pick somebody. Alexander, you're on the spot.
I would say to follow your passion is the number one thing. I mean, my love for cinema started when my grandfather was a trumpet player in Denver. Used to practice jazz skills every night, and I would sit in the basement while he practiced, and I would watch Kurosawa and Hitchcock and all of the classic films, and have him kind of talk me through them and pause them and talk about them. And that turned into me touring with different bands and doing videography type of stuff, which led me to starting this IPTV company Then that kind of went away, and I ended up working for Gore Verbinski for a little bit out here doing that animated movie Rango, and got to meet Hans Zimmer and all sorts of people through that.
Awesome.
And music, chasing music as a passion. And there's this, a lot of people have a passion for both cinema and music. And there's something lyrical, I think, about the best films. I know you mentioned The Last Waltz. That was a huge reference for us too. That Scorsese doc is like the end all be all. But, my thing with Jeff and my thing with coming back to work on this project as a passion project is, if you follow those things that you're passionate about, it leads to success. And we've been into 75 plus film festivals at this point, and gotten to talk to different filmmakers all over the world. And it really, has just been this, I hate the word organic, but it's this process of like, finding the story and sharing the love for jazz as an art form, and showing its power, and being almost evangelical about it, that people should be interacting with this form, and people should be having a conversation about jazz music. And that's my biggest advice, is follow your passion, and the steps will continue to fall in place, even if it feels like you're completely alone.
Yeah, 100%. Go ahead.
I'll piggyback off of that and steal something from somebody far smarter than me. There was I saw a panel years ago at a Red Bull Music Conference where James Murphy from LCD Sound System talked about, and
love that guy.
I'm paraphrasing because I've struggled to find this clip. He said something to the effect of my aesthetic is a really bad idea done really, really, really hard. Right. And what I mean by that is I think the same thing that Alexander's talking about is singular vision, right? There is somebody out there that loves the same thing as you, I promise. And it may not be a large crowd. It may not be in an arena, but maybe it is, right? Maybe it is. And you're never going to sort of find that unless you commit very singularly to something, and that you get the absolute most out of one singular thing before you try to do anything else, whatever that is.
That's great. And I love that guy. He's great. What about you, Jeremy? Any advice?
I would agree with both of what these guys said. Follow your passion, and don't worry about pleasing everybody. Just please the people that are into your stuff, and they're out there. You don't have to be all things to all people.
Yeah.
Just follow your passion. That's the biggest takeaway I think anybody can have. I mean, in terms of defining success, there's a lot of different ways to do that. But if you're doing what you love, I think that in and of itself says a lot.
And maybe don't like look around over your shoulder at everybody else and judge. Like, where am I sitting? Right. It's part of it too.
Yeah, it's not about that. I mean, I could name half a dozen people who we all would have considered successes that probably are not, in hindsight, not doing that great for whatever reason, even they look financially successful or, from a career standpoint. It's really about what's in your heart, and that's what's going to bring out the best work too, I think.
Amen. And on that note, let's just leave it there. That was great. I want to thank all you guys so much for joining us. Andrew Hunter, Jeremy Cooker from Offline Playlist, Alexander Craven from In the Same Direction. Great films, and thank you everyone for watching them and for watching this panel. Thanks guys for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Sure.